What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode Podcast Weekly Real Estate Tip. And for today's Weekly Real Estate Tip, I have two questions sent in from you amazing podcast listeners here and that I handpicked and decided to answer on today's Weekly Real Estate Tip. All right, so these two questions are around, okay, if the COVID lockdowns come back around, there's whispers out there that they might be coming back. So if that happens, how to prep for your business. Secondary question is from a team leader that is in production but wanting to grow agent count and having a difficult time balancing those. So I'm going to jump into the questions and give my in-depth response here on today's real estate tip into both of these. Now, if you have questions that you would like to see me hit on and answer here on the GSD Mode podcast, you can either shoot those to joshua@gsdmode.com, or if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, you can comment below and I'll get them that way as well. I check the comments each and every single day here on the YouTube channel. With that being said, let's just dive on into it. All right, so question number one is this. I am a newer real estate agent. I got licensed after the COVID lockdowns. I have read that the COVID lockdowns might be coming back. How do you recommend I prepare for these with my business? All right, so my answer is going to be twofold here because we've got what we had to do and what I recommend to do, like if the lockdowns come back in place. And then the secondary one is about the Fed's response that also led to other things. Because we got the physical lockdowns, and then we have, okay, how did fiscal and monetary policy, impact our business as well? So kind of two different things here. Now, this is assuming that these things come back in the same way that they were. And just like you, I have heard of this as well. Supposedly there's a new variant that's out there that, we've already seen some schools already shut down, some businesses bringing back masks and whatnot. And I don't know if this is going to happen, not happen, who knows? But when I look at this and how I operate my business is to hope for the best and plan for the worst. So I'm really glad that you are asking this question here, because again, hope for the best, plan for the worst. Hopefully they don't come back. Hopefully this isn't another thing, but let me be planned and prepped and prepared just in case. Okay, so number one on the first thing. Now this is about the actual lockdowns themselves and how to go out there and prep and plan for this. So I think the best way to go out there and prep and plan for this is, and I'll go into some other things too about, operating virtually inside your business and things that we did during that time and some of the things that we've still adopted and kept in place since that time that have been massively successful for us. But the first thing that I would do is I would go through, because if you were, this is, for those of you watching and listening, this is a newer agent that wasn't licensed during this time. They got licensed post the COVID lockdowns. So the first thing that I would do is go see, okay, what took place when it came to the lockdowns, because this was, at least in my lifetime, and maybe it's just because I've never been, one to really follow politics and whatever, but this is the first time that I really had my eyes open to, the differences and the power of local governments. Everybody responded differently. If you were in Florida, obviously there was a different response than what you had in maybe Michigan or, here in Arizona. And what was taking place here in Arizona was not just, what was different by the state. You had the governor's different restrictions, but then you had even city by city. Like when I'd go to Flagstaff, it might have been different than it was, here in Phoenix. So I would look at, okay, well, what took place? How did it impact the real estate business? At least for most of us in the real estate industry, we were considered essential. So we were able still to go out there and operate. Some areas that weren't though. I believe like in areas like Michigan, they had it where, okay, title companies were closed down for a period of time, and it made it almost impossible to go out there and do closings, right? For a length of period of time, right? So, and again, you can go fact check me on that. I'm not saying I know that for sure. I'm trying to go off memory. I've got coaching clients from all over the U.S., all over Canada. So I was getting feedback of what was going on in each market. But anyway, that's what I would do. Now, if you were in a market, like the example I gave in Michigan where things were, completely locked down, even title companies that blocked your ability to go out there and have any recordings or whatnot for, let's just say that was 30 days or 60 days or however long that was. Again, hopefully this doesn't come back, right? But hope for the best, plan for the worst. So then from there, okay, if you cannot be closing deals, that doesn't mean that we still can't be effective in our real estate business. So when I had my coaching clients come to me during that time, I'm like, look, you can't control that. But right now, what can you do? You can take this advantage of this time and work on your business. You can't work in it, but you can work on it, working on those systems, working on all of that stuff. However, what I would do right now is I'd be working your ass off to get as much money in the bank. So then that way, if you have to go 1 or 2 or 3 months without a paycheck, you have that cushion, so you don't have to drop out of this industry and become obsolete for something that's completely out of our control, right? So that's one way that you can go out there and control that. So then from there, okay, well then plan on those other things based on what those restrictions were for your area. Then from there, one thing that we kind of all had to do very quickly was adapt to this virtual environment. Now, my area here in Phoenix, restaurants were closed for a little while, things like that were closed for a little while, but we were still able to operate in real estate. But there was a couple things taking place, right? Like you had, the fear of that interaction with people, not that I didn't have a fear of it, but meaning, okay, like people may not wanted to go out there and view homes in person. Maybe sellers didn't want people coming through their properties during that time. So what I recommend is to go through your buyer presentation, go through your listing presentation, and having those where you can deliver those effectively on Zoom, right? Because this is what we had to switch to very heavily. Now, luckily, I'm in a market that's a very heavy reload market. So we had a lot of people moving here from out of state and a lot of people, whatnot. So we were already used to this, when we get a lot of people moving, let's just say from the Midwest out here to Phoenix, Arizona. So we were already used to having to do virtual buyer presentations and virtual presentations. So we might have been a little bit further prepared and ahead of this than others, but I would prepare for that. Okay. Can I take my, not can I would be prepared to, and I'd start figuring out, okay, how to deliver an effective buyer consultation via Zoom, how to deliver an effective listing presentation via Zoom, right? So the presentations are all the same. It's just instead of me being, across a kitchen table or across a conference room table, I'm just, sharing my screen, doing it via Zoom. So I'd make sure that you get familiar with Zoom, know how to utilize it, all of that stuff. And there's other platforms out there. I'm just saying Zoom because that's what we use and, one of the most popular out there. But then from there, one of the differences is, okay, well, I cannot get them to sign a buyer broker agreement while we're on the same Zoom meeting. I can't get them to sign a listing agreement while we're on the same meeting. Now I can, but I got to do that now through DocuSign. So that adds an extra step. Instead of just saying, okay, well, here's these papers, go ahead and sign here. Right. And this is the same thing. If those of you, I know a lot of you are broker owners and team leaders that listen to this too. Same thing for agent recruits. Now you can do this twofold where you can wait until you're at a certain point in that Zoom presentation where then, or until you're completely done with it, where then you send them. You can explain the documents that you need them to fill out, over that, and then email them or DocuSign them the buyer broker agreement and the consultation and whatnot. So just be prepared for that. The secondary thing is, to be, because like all of these need to happen virtually, right? So now, good thing with pre-quals, that usually is done virtually, right? Through online apps or through phone conversations. So usually our clients aren't meeting with lenders. So, that's something that you probably already have covered, but again, be prepared for that. Just thinking of anything that's usually done in face to face, how can we do this virtually now? Okay. So then the secondary thing is virtual showings. Okay. So when I have somebody, when I'm following up leads, instead of going into, hey, would you like to schedule time to go view that property? Now, depending on what your restrictions are in your area and depending on people's comfort, that's still something that you can pitch and offer, but for some, if their comfort is low, with that, okay, like we during that time started doing a lot of FaceTime virtual showings. And again, this was something that we are used to because when I got buyer clients that are in, Wisconsin that aren't physically here, it's something that we were doing already, not at the level that we were doing during the COVID lockdowns, but something that we already had experience with, but getting used to, okay, I'm going to go, walk them through a tour on FaceTime, show them what they want to show, but just making that where it's part of your presentations, right? So then it's as close to and the next best thing to being face-to-face in person. And you can get a very strong idea, on if they like the property, don't like the property, all through those virtual showings and virtual components. So really that's all it just comes down to, right? Of anything that you are doing right now. Okay, if you have to switch to doing them virtually, so now again, I was already blessed, because I had no idea these lockdowns were going to come to the severity that they did the first time around. But even with my internal staff, we had already set it up, but we allowed our people to work either in the office or virtually, so instead of getting them like just desktop computers, I'd already been getting them laptops and setting everything up where they could work virtually or from the office so they could pick and choose, so just thinking about breaking down and just make a list of, okay, what are all the things that you're doing in person right now, that if you stop doing those things would hurt your business, that you need to flip, to that virtual component. Okay, then the other thing here is to identify your strategies. And then again, based on, okay, how severe those lockdowns are, so if you were in a market that open houses were just not allowed. Now, in my market, again, we were considered essential. We could continue doing open houses, but there was a brief period of time there, and I can't remember the timeline, but maybe it was, let's just call it the first 2 months, before more people got comfortable with this and then realized, okay, this thing isn't, maybe as severe as they anticipated, and they got more comfortable, whatever, right? But we couldn't do open houses, or we didn't do open houses. I guess we could do them, we just didn't do them. Through that time. So then, okay, if your business is very, very reliant on, let's just say, open houses or in-person networking or whatever, okay, then I would start thinking about, or at least having in play, okay, what are the lead generation strategies that you are going to deploy and implement, to take the place of these things, right? And look, there is right now, if you just go online, you guys can go Google this and type in, I don't know, COVID-19 restrictions 2023 or whatever. I mean, it's something I've been keeping a heavy watch on as well, because just like I've been seeing these reports and these different things as well. And there's already countries that are already going like full lockdown mode out there, right? And I don't know if it's the same strictness that they had before, but with the little bit of information I'm getting, seeing out there, it looks like there's some countries that are already implementing this. So who knows, with that severity of this, but again, hope for the best, plan for the worst. Okay, so then the secondary thing here. Now, this has nothing to necessarily do with the lockdowns. This came down to the Fed's response. And by Feds, I mean the federal government as well as the Federal Reserve, right? So if this happens again, and they follow these same protocols, and this is the thing that we can't prep and plan for, because look, if we look at this, during the COVID lockdowns. Now, first, let's rewind the clocks to 5 months before the COVID lockdowns. We had a banking liquidity crisis to the magnitude of scale that happened during the Great Financial Crisis. So in September of 2019, there was a $6 trillion bailout to the banking system because of liquidity crisis. What's called the repo market, or the shadow banking system, completely dried up. And the only difference between September of 2019 and the Great Financial Crisis is this time the Fed, they were ahead of it versus, letting banks start to collapse and Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers, and then creating, social panic and all of that. This time, like most of you, other than if you watch this podcast, probably didn't even have awareness of that, right? Like the Federal Reserve is not a public entity. They don't need to disclose this stuff to us. So unless you're really, really, really paying attention, we didn't know that stuff was going on. Then what happened? Okay, during those, couple year span of the COVID-19 emergency, right? They printed 40% of every dollar to ever exist in United States history. So since 1776, right? Since the inception of the dollar, if you will, 40% of all dollars to ever be created, to ever be pushed into circulation, was created during that span, right? And that created the inflation situation that we are in right now. And there's other things too. I mean, it could be argued that, somewhat supply chains, it was somewhat, it's a combination of multiple things. But if you look at this, okay, like today, life is about 40% more expensive than it was pre-COVID, so if they come in and they feel like they need to, or they choose to, or for whatever reason they choose to, go out there and do a similar response, we can then expect asset prices to go through the roof again. We can expect inflation to go through the roof, because that's all just inflation, right? When you're pulling money out of the future, pulling it into now, right? It's going to fast forward that inflation, so life is going to get a shit ton more expensive. Now we'll see what happens with interest rates again, because interest rates were not, for real estate, interest rates were not so low because of the money printing. They were so low because the Federal Reserve was buying $90 billion a month of mortgage-backed securities, right? I mean, so many people think that mortgage rates are determined by, what's going on with the Federal Reserve rate hikes. And I mean, it all fits together in the same picture. So I'm not saying that it doesn't at all have an impact, right? But the immediate impact on what is going on with mortgage rates is based on mortgage-backed security purchases, right? Well, during that time, nobody was out there buying them. So the federal government, or not the federal government, the Federal Reserve came in and started buying $90 billion a month. And then when we started seeing in 2022, right, when we watched them go from like 3% up to 6 or 7% in less than a 6-month span, or whatever that chunked out to being, that's because the Federal Reserve stopped buying mortgage-backed securities, right? And you started seeing them skyrocket way before the Federal Reserve even started to do their rate hike, their quantitative tightening, or their tightening process, right? So we'll see how that plays out, and we'll see where that goes. But that's a secondary thing. Again, it's hard to plan and prep for that, but it's something to watch and pay attention to so we know how to adjust accordingly and shift our strategies. All right, so hopefully that is helpful. Now, question number 2 here. All right, so I want to grow my team. I got 5 agents plus myself and 1 full-time admin, so team of 7 total. So yourself, plus you got 5 agents and 1 admin. I am in the stage where I still need to produce personally, but I also want to grow my agents' production, and I'm having a very difficult time balancing everything. Every time I try to recruit more agents, my production goes down. I'm not sure how to do this. Do you have any advice to help me? Yeah, 100%. Okay, so this is the trap that most team leaders and most broker owners get themselves into, or a trap that most fall within, if you will, during kind of that infancy stages of building, a large team or a brokerage. And when I say infancy stages, those beginning stages where, you still need to be in production because your revenue is your own production, is the vast majority of the revenue coming into the organization. Your agent's revenue is the minority of the revenue coming in. And yeah, you got to recruit new agents. You got to, train and onboard your agents. You got to support your agents, but you got to stay in production. And this is the trap that most get into. And what I see for most is next thing you know, they're allocating, let's just say 80% of their time, energy, and effort into their agents versus their own production, when their revenue is about 80% and their agent's revenue is only 20%. Well, then that forces their own production to fall off of a damn cliff. And then next thing you know, now they're in a very difficult, hard, tight spot because revenue dried up. So with this, and this is really, really important, because I'm telling you right now, every team leader and every broker owner, if you don't know how to navigate through this scenario, almost everybody I've ever talked to and everybody that I've ever worked with experiences this, but there is a quick and easy way to ensure that you don't experience this. And what I call this, and look, I went through this too. I had to figure this stuff out. This is the same shit I went through when I grew my team, starting my team, years and years and years ago. So I call it red light, green light time allocation. So that game, red light, green light, that we played when we were kids, right? So it's red light, and then you stop, and then green light, then you go, and then red light. So red light, green light, time allocation. So I'm going to, go out on a limb here and make the assumption that your production with 5 agents that you have right now, my guess is, and it doesn't matter what my guess is, I'm just going to use this for the example of this podcast today. So know your numbers and you'll be able to allocate accordingly. But my guess is, and let's just assume that your production from your own revenue is 80% of the revenue that the team or brokerage is collecting. And that might sound, like you're like, well, those that are watching and listening might be like, well, how is that possible? You got 5 agents and then 1 agent, how are they bringing in, 80% of the income? Well, we're talking about income that comes to the team or comes to the brokerage, right? Because, okay, like if my agents are out there producing, it's not like I get and retain 50% of everything or 100% of everything that they're producing, right? It might be 50%, of everything that they're producing, where when I'm producing, I'm keeping 100% of my production, right? When it comes to the business. So then with that, And let me take a step back further here. I recommend to essentially run two separate P&Ls. So a P&L on your own production, and it doesn't have to necessarily be two separate P&Ls. I mean, that's how I recommend to do it. But, as long as you can separate your numbers very quickly so you know exactly how much of the total company revenue is coming in from your production, how much of the total company revenue is coming in from your agent's production. It doesn't matter, you guys, if you're a team or brokerage, this is the same thing that applies. Okay, so let's just assume that your revenue from your own production is 80%. What's coming in from your agents is 20%. This is where the red light, green light time allocation comes into place. So based on the total percentage of your production of overall business revenue is then how much time you allocate towards your production. So if your production is 80% of the revenue, you then allocate 80% of your time, energy, effort, and focus towards your own production. And this is how you will ensure, as I walk through deeper with this, this is how the whole point of this is how you will ensure to grow your agent count and grow your agent production without taking a dip in revenue, right? So a lot of people are like, oh, I want to get out of production, but I'm just scared my revenue is going to dip. This is how you do it with keeping your revenue high and making sure that you do not take a dip in your revenue in your team or your brokerage. Okay, so you got 80% of your time, energy, focus, and effort on your own production to making sure that your production is staying up. Now you got 20% of your total time, energy, effort, and focus on your agents. And when I say on your agents, this is going to include recruiting new agents, onboarding those agents, training, and supporting the agents that you have, right? Because you're going to need to recruit new agents and more agents, right? Like you're not going to, be able to get to a point where you can exit out of production with only 5 agents, right? So you're going to need more agents. So that's 20% of your time allocated to that, right? Now here is the key, is to make sure through systems, processes, and having the right overall structure that you are operating extremely effectively and extremely efficiently with that 20% of time towards your agents. And I'll explain how to do this here in a moment, but you're operating so effectively and efficiently with that next thing you know, that grows to to 30%, where now your agents are bringing in 30% of the revenue. Right? So then you can back off your time. You can readjust this red light, green light time allocation. Now you can adjust your time to your own business down to 70%, and you can adjust your time that you're giving your agents by 30%. Yeah, right? And then you stay there. You stay strict to that. Okay, well then when your agent's revenue is now 40%, right? Then you dip your time to your revenue, your business down to 60%, and you increase that to 40%. So you're playing this game, red light, green light time allocation. So now how do you operate extremely effectively and efficiently with your agents to ensure that you're able to maximize and optimize the time that you're giving them to get their production up and up and up? Okay, so a few different things here. Number one, systems and processes, right? So make what I recommend and what I've done. So like when I bring on an agent as an example, trying to see, let me grab this real quick. Sorry about that. I had to grab this. So those of you that are listening audio, I'll explain it, but those of you watching YouTube, you can see this. All right, so I've got my agent playbook, right? So here's our Revisto Real Estate Group playbook manual. Right, so I have every single process, procedure, everything that we do outlined inside this bad boy. So exactly how we, prep for buyer presentations, listing presentations, every script, every little thing is inside here. Then I have video trainings created for each one of these things. So when I go out there and recruit a new agent, I put them through my 14-day onboarding process, which essentially they're just handed this binder, with our operations manual. Then they're given a username and login, and it's got a checklist and gives them instruction of what to do and how to do it. There's a curriculum with that. But their first 14 days is just watching all that shit. And that's teaching them everything that they need to know to at least initially start having success. That's where it's walking them through their business plan. It's walking them through buyer presentations, listing presentations, how to download all those materials, walking them, training them through our CRM, everything they need to know about lead gen, lead follow-up. Like all of that stuff is in there, right? So this allows it then where I can go out there and with the energy and effort as an onboarding standpoint, bring on 10 agents at once with the same energy and effort as one agent, right? So processes and systems allows that scalability. Also, in addition to that, if you don't have a way for your agents to be resourceful, you become the only resource. And this is where, again, so many team leaders and broker owners get bogged down. It's like your phone's blowing up and you're just asking answering all these questions from your agents. Well, again, look, if you do not have a way for them to be resourceful, you'll become the only resource, and that becomes your fault, right? So then from there, any question you ever get more than once, boom, you create a video around it, you add it to your resource library, you have it well organized so your agents can go out there and access that, right? So that as far as, onboarding. Then from there, when it comes to training and ongoing training, what I recommend is to do everything in groups, right? Get away from this one-on-one. Even if you are, I know that you're a team. So let's just say within your team, you're giving leads, which you probably are. A lot of team leaders think, oh, I got to have one-on-one accountability meetings every single week, whatever. No, you could do all that. Like number one, you don't even need to have accountability meetings if you have the right systems and process in place, because the systems create the accountability. The systems tell your people what to do, when to do it, how to do it, right? Holds them accountable. So then you just inspect what you expect. So your job is to build out, manage the systems. The systems, manage and hold your people accountable. So I don't have to go out there and do one-on-one accountability meetings, because through our onboarding process, we set the expectations of what needs to happen. We set the repercussions of what's going to happen if those expectations aren't met. Then from there, based on daily trackers that I'm able to look at every single day, I can see what's going on. And then if you do want to do an element of accountability meeting still, okay, cool. Just do it as groups, right? Public declaration equates to manifestation. It's way more powerful to do these things in a group environment, pull up everybody's numbers, have a conversation all in a group environment. So instead of doing 5 one-to-ones a week, okay, then bam, I can get all 5 of those agents together, do this in one centralized meeting, and get all those things discussed. So instead of 5 hours a week of meeting time, boom, I got this down into, 1 hour. So any kind of trainings, any meetings that you're doing, whatever, get in the habit of doing those one-on-ones. Now, you are a team leader, not a brokerage owner here in this situation. So I'll say this is where it does maybe differentiate between if you're a team leader or brokerage owner, is make sure if you're a team and you have a designated broker through your brokerage that you're building your team within, right? Like leverage, that broker. Right? Like I have, one of the first things when you come in here, right? Like it's okay, our meeting schedule, it walks them through how to get help, how to get support. So, okay, hey, Ravisto Real Estate Group help and support information. Here's where you go if you need this. Here's where you go if you need this. Here's where you go if you need broker support. Here's where you need to go if you need this. Right? So we walk them through instructions of where to go for what the things they need. So I want them come to me if they need coaching help, help with strategy, help converting a lead, whatever. But if they need, this specific verbiage for a contract, like go to our designated broker. That's what we're paying them for. That's why they exist here. Right? Now, that's one differentiation between a team leader and brokerage owner is usually if you're a brokerage owner, you're also the designated broker in the infancy stages, building this out. Eventually you might get to a point when, depending on what your goals are, where you can hire a designated broker slash ops manager. So they're kind of doing the management roles for you. Okay. So then from there, when it also comes to groups, is I recommend to start recruiting in groups, right? So yeah, you're going to be running, let's just say you're running your Indeed ads or Facebook ads, and you're following up with cross-sale agents, right? You always want to be recruiting. Well, then from there, invite them into your group meetings and things that you're already doing, all the trainings that you already have. So this is what I do, right? Because like if I would rather have 5 people in one recruit meeting than one-on-ones with all 5. So when I have potential agent recruits that I'm having a conversation with, I just tell them that, hey, look, as you're talking to me and as you're talking to all other brokerage owners out there, all other team leaders, we're all going to tell you the same thing, that we have the best training, the best systems, the best support, that we're the best at all these things. So, and everybody's going to tell you the same damn thing. So how can you possibly decipher who the best is for you? If we're all telling you that we're the best, how can you decipher who the best is for you? The only way for you to decipher who the best is for you is for you to experience us. So what I'd recommend, and I'll answer any questions that you have while we're on the phone here. But what I recommend is that you come in for a weekly mastermind. We do them every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time here at this location. And I have 2 promises to you during this experience. Number 1, you are going to learn a shit ton. Whether you decide to join with us or join somebody else, you are going to learn a ton that's going to help you grow your business regardless of where you wind up. Number 2, my second promise to you is that you are not going to be recruited. Look, I don't beg, I don't chase, I don't want anybody to be part of our organization that doesn't want to be here. Everybody that chooses to be here, chooses to be here. Nobody's handcuffed. Anybody can leave at any time. We're all independent contractors. I only want to roll with people people that choose to be here and that choose and identify that this is the best place for them to be here. So after this meeting, after the mastermind, we'll spend a few minutes. I'll walk you through everything that we do, how we operate, what our splits are, all of that. And if you decide this is for you, great. If not, that's okay too. Look, we can still be friends. So my promise to you is you're not going to be pushed. You're not going to be pressured. We have a very strict, absolute no pressure policy. If I have to sell you to join us, then I'm going to have to sell you constantly to stay with us. And again, I don't want anybody here that doesn't want to be here. Does that sound fair? Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, cool. Can I plan on seeing you this Tuesday? Okay, yeah, like micro commitments are huge when it comes to, sales and agents, right? So doing everything. So then now I get them to come into an experience that we're already doing with our weekly masterminds. Then from there, after that mastermind, let's just say I have 4 agent recruit guests. I just slide them over to the conference room, or as soon as the agents leave, right, we just sit down. And then again, I'm giving the same one presentation I give one-on-one. Now I'm giving it to 4 people versus 1 person, so I can do things in groups, which just allows me to go out there. It's just a leverage quotient, right? Leverage piece. So this is how you operate efficiently. So doing things in groups through the right processes, through the right systems, setting the right expectations and whatnot. This is how you operate efficiently and effectively as possible. So that 20% of your time allocation. So if you're working 60 hours a week, okay, you got, what is that? 50 hours towards your own production, 10 hours towards your agents. This is how you can support those your 5 agents with 10 hours and even grow with agent recruiting with that 10 hours by being highly effective and efficient with this. So hopefully this helps answer your question. And you guys, this is what I do within my coaching program. So if you guys are interested in my coaching and mentorship program, I highly recommend it. Go check out gsdmode.com. Click that coaching tab. My coaching program, I give you everything in my business, man. It's like a business in a box, if you will, where I give you my whole entire playbook, every one of our processes, everything that we do. I give it to you in editable format so you can just quickly rip off, duplicate, copy, edit, do anything that you want to do there. There's nothing that's left out. Plus, you have daily access to me to support you every step of the way. I've made it and built it. My mission here has been to create and make it the most effective business building real estate coaching program in the industry, hands down, which we've by far accomplished that, while at the same time making it the most affordable, where it's less than shit like your Starbucks budget on a daily basis for most people, right? So most effective, most efficient. So if you want to check it out, go to gsdmode.com, click on that coaching tab. There's an in-depth video that you don't need to opt in for. I'm not going to spam you with a bunch of shit, but you can go out there and watch that, about 30-minute video that walks you through all the different elements, how it works. There's also a link where you can schedule a one-on-one call with me personally. So a zero pressure discovery call where, I'll walk you through how the program works, answer any questions that you have about that. If the program works for you, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. We can still be friends. I have the same no pressure policy with, my coaching clients as I do agent recruits on my team, same as I do with buyer and seller clients. Look, I understand that people hate being pressured, high pressured. I hate it too. So if it's for you, cool. If not, that's okay too. I'll still make sure that this call is powerful for your time. Talk about your business, what your goals are, what your obstacles are. So whether you join or not, make sure it's powerful for your time. All right, guys, I hope that you found this helpful. Keep crushing it, keep kicking ass, and I will see you next time. Peace.